Thank you for joining another edition of Bumps and Thumps, the talk of wrestling. I'm Brian Ferguson. My host today, or my guest today, excuse me, pro wrestler, DJ, professional wrestling manager, and author. Ladies and gentlemen, my host, my guest, Kenny Casanova. Thank you, sir, for coming on today.
You forgot to mention swarthy, handsome individual. Thank you. I'll do that, though.
You can do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's talk about your trademark facial expression.
Oh, this?
Yes. How did that come about?
So, all right. So that's a long story. And I've been doing it since 93, maybe 1993 or something. So if you look at any pictures of mine after that, I almost always do it in every picture.
Yeah.
Well, so back when I was coming up with the character, I started as a wrestler, but I chose wrestling manager over that because I figured I could move longer in that direction. We thought about video games. You know how video games, like when a guy's not moving, he has a stance. And my thought was, my guy should be a little bit afraid, a little bit, cowardly. So that is like a deer in headlights look, right?
Yeah.
And also, if you look, other wrestlers have used it in the past, more scary type gimmicks. So picture Smash and Demolition, Axe and Smash.
Yeah.
When Smash says, "Tell him Axe," and Axe is like, "I'm gonna come and get you, powers of pain." And then you got Smash in the background going, like he was doing that face. So that was one thing I remember early on, that some wrestlers made that face to try to either mock the other wrestler or show some kind of fear. I think another guy used to do it too. NWO would kind of go
too sweet
like this too. I think background they would do kind of like this while
the
other guy was talking. So I just kind of took that and I said, I'm going to do it everywhere though. I'm going to kill it. Every shot I'm going to do it in. And basically there were very few without me doing that.
Yeah, there's not. I mean,
funny question. I don't think anyone's asked me that before, but they see it and they go, "What the hell is that?" Be like, is it duck lips? And I'm not really doing that now.
Right. Yeah.
So cool question.
No, I was interested. Most photos I see of you have that facial expression, and I just wanted to know. I've like I said earlier before we got on here, I watched a couple podcasts with you with other podcasters, and you got a lot of interesting stories, but I didn't hear that question. So I was like, I'm going to ask that question.
There you go. That's good.
All right. So let's talk a little bit growing up and getting into the business. Where'd you grow up and how did you get into the business?
So I grew up in a lot of little places. I was born in Danville, Pennsylvania, moved over to Haverhill, Mass, moved to Fall River, Mass, moved to Binghamton, and then moved to Albany, New York. My dad was a minister for the Salvation Army, and it's kind of like a Baptist type minister, and they would move him around to wherever the actual officers, is what they called them, of the Salvation Army, did their best work. So he was really good at the Christmas, the kettle bell ringing that you would see.
Yes.
So he raised a lot of money for different areas. So they bumped him around where it needed it sometime. For me, it kind of sucked because it meant that I was in a bunch of different schools and meeting, new kids that I wanted to be my friends, and I would have to do stuff to kind of stand out. So that's kind of maybe where I developed my sense of humor, from a class clown kind of situation, wanting to be known. I was in 3 different high schools, which sucks. You only have 4 years. So, and also wasn't all that good with the ladies because as a kid, you're a little bit shy, and then being the new kid, putting that on top of it. So I think the Kenny Casanova character came out of the idea as I'm not all that much of a ladies' man at the time I was thinking of, younger. But it would be funny to what if, a nerdy dude was. So that's kind of where it came from. In my, let me think, let's say 1987, I had an opportunity to sell tickets and go to an after show with Captain Lou Albano for an independent wrestling show where he ripped off the promotion's name of WWWF. It wasn't WWF early days, but he called it that, and had all kinds of people there. Had Tony Atlas, Colonel De Beers, Samoan SWAT team, Misty Blue, a lot of that era. And anyhow, I got to talking to him back in '88, and we were eating chicken wings together, and he's eating the knuckle, the bottom part off the and I'm like, oh man, you know, and he got a kick out of grossing me out. So we got talking a little bit, and I thought it'd be neat to be a manager, you know, or maybe a wrestler. And come, I would say 6 or 7 years later, I was running a comic book store. One of the guys was going to go to a training school, and I said, let me tag along with you. So that's how it kind of all started.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Wow. Interesting. Captain Lou Albano.
Yeah.
All started with him. I remember him as a kid. Man. Yeah, he was a great manager. I don't know about you, but I think the managerial part of the business today is a lost art. Because the only one I really know is, you know, he's Paul Heyman, and he's calling him the Advocate, or you know, and it isn't really. I think, you know,
Vince doesn't like the name. He doesn't like the word manager, so they always come up with something to call him, you know, associate or what have you. Vince, I think, has always wanted his product to look not Memphis, even though he's, you know, it's kind of cartoony, but they didn't want that manager idea. And a lot of times, like even today, like he frowns upon guys coming in who sound Southern. Like, I guess AJ had a little rough start because he thought he seemed too Southern, didn't want to be that wrestling is the thing that he tries to stay away from. So maybe that's why managers kind of get kicked to the wayside a little bit, I've thought. But yeah, they were my favorite too. They were the mouthpiece. They were the instigators. They were the bad guys that created the good guys. So that's the route I wanted to go.
Well, that's good. So let's talk about you managing. You managed some guys in the independents that were well known when they were in the big time, and then they went to the indies. What was that like for you? Managing like Bundy?
That's pretty cool. I mean, to get
I mean, did you have a lot of interaction? I mean, did you guys go over, I don't know, like, I'm going to trip this guy.
So, I guess, I'd like to say that I got to manage a lot of the guys coming up and a lot of the guys coming down, the people who kind of left the promotion, you know, the big stuff in New York, the WCW. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, first for a second there. So, and the good thing about getting to work with your heroes, you know, you finally get to meet them, get to hang out with them a little bit, see what they're like. Mm-hmm. They had already had rough, you know, schedules, and now it's a little bit lighter in the independent. So when they could take advantage of not having to kill themselves, the manager could step in and do the bumps and do some of the crazy stuff and take some of the heat off of them. So getting to work with some of what you would call the legends, or like the old timers, was pretty neat, because they would figure out a way to show themselves still shining, but using, you know, that extra added prop, which would be me. And quite often I would get a lot of extra spotlight too, because I was willing to drive back then. A lot of guys would just do one little independent in the mid 90s, and that was it. They'd stay in the area, but I jumped around and did a bunch of stuff. So I would become familiar with a lot of, you know, the classic wrestlers that we grew up with, and they give me more spots, and they also taught me a lot of stuff. So I learned a lot about the entertainment world.
Yeah, let's talk.
Working with them.
Let's kind of expand on that if we can. You talk about traveling and driving. I mean, I'm assuming you drove those guys to their shows, and probably
not always.
Not always.
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, not always. Sometimes. A lot of times, if I was close to the promoter would ask me to grab them if they were on the way from somewhere here or there. So I rode with a lot of different people, but in many occasions I was driving up with other local talents from my area that were more, you know, mid-Carter kind of status.
Yeah.
So,
do you have any outlandish story?
Am I locking up on you there?
A little bit. That's okay. That's all right. It comes and goes.
I don't know if it's on my end or yours.
I'm not sure.
Weird. Weird story.
Yeah, like, just an outlandish one or something. Just something that just pops in your mind.
Let me think. I don't know. Maybe hanging out with Eddie Guerrero in the mall and people coming up to him and you know recognizing him after he left WWE at the time. And we went to WWA, was a promotion in Massachusetts run by a guy named Mike Sparta, who was the brother of a referee named Freddie Sparta, old referee in WWF. They were kind of using that area for you know, like a testing ground. And I think they sent Eddie over to Sparta's promotion to give him some work while he was, I don't know, maybe he failed a drug test or something. He was gone for a quick, short handful of months.
Yeah.
Tom Pritchard was backstage as one of the agents. Sal Sincere was one of the bookers. And I'm hanging out with Eddie and we're driving around with him, you know, and he would get a bunch of chicken and look at it and say, oh, this is fatty. I'm really picky. I can't eat it, you know. And I realized, you know, how important diet was some of these guys that are, you know, super lean and really TV ready. And I just remember him doing Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair impersonations of the back of my car when we were driving, and he was getting a kick out of just trying to like, you know, pop the other couple of guys that were in the car with me.
Yeah.
And when we got out of the car, Eddie, let me take your bags, brother. And he was taking bags for us. I don't know why. I don't know if it was a rib on us or he was just showing he was thankful for the legs. That's kind of a funny story I haven't told before in here. So there you go.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Hey, let's talk a little bit about Kendra Casanova. The gig you did as the ladies.
Jeez, you're really getting into my past. Yeah.
Well, I saw it on there. I was like, is this right?
Handful of times I'd get booked to wrestle women as a joke. It's almost like the Andy Kaufman kind of thing. And I said, you know, screw it. I'm gonna show up, and rather than just totally bury Kenny Casanova, I'll say, hey, it ain't even me. It's Kendra Casanova. It's my sister. Later on, many years later, they did something similar with Santino. I don't know if you remember that. He did. I don't know if her name was Santina or whatever, but he kind of came out and drag and wrestled. It was a similar type thing. But yeah, I did the whole, and I left a goatee, so you could definitely see that this is a bunch of crap. I wore, I think my wife's prom dress. It was like a green, ugly prom dress with like a little yellow shirt underneath. It was pretty ugly, hideous thing. And the promoters got a kick out of it. I got a number of ladies championship title runs.
That's so, you won a couple titles if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yep. I beat Misty Hyatt, Miss Patricia, who was like kind of like a valet for the Blue Meanie, Miss DeVille. She's a good friend of mine. She's got a book coming out soon. Number of different people. So yeah, it was kind of a funny thing.
When
I was trained to wrestle,
you
know, so I could do it, but again, I like doing the managing stuff. At 5'11", I'm kind of big, but I'm not, you know, giant. So I always figured, I looked better next to some of the big guys back then. These days, that doesn't even apply as much because they're all different sizes, and a lot of the guys end up being smaller than me these days, which I think is kind of funny. But just how things turned out eventually once cruiserweights kind of got pushed in WCW and Lucha and all. You know, on American television. But
which promotion did you like working for the best? I mean, as far as treating you, giving you opportunities, was there any particular one that you're like, you know, I really enjoyed working for?
So other than ones that I had my hand in promoting, because I also helped to promote a lot for a promotion called New Breed Wrestling, upstate New York, and also kind of a sister promotion to that, World of Hurt Wrestling. Those, I mean, I kind of had my hands in the writing and stuff in the back too. So but I would say Frank Goodman was pretty. He's now in Florida, but he was New York City, called USA Power Pro Wrestling. He used to put me in with a bunch of different guys. I got to work with King Kong Bundy, like you said, Rocco Rock there, a number of different people, Jake the Snake Roberts, a lot of big names and stuff. Always gave me a pretty good opportunity there. So I guess him.
All right. Let's talk about your DJing a little bit. What do you do for that? I mean, do you do weddings? Do you do shows? Do you do clubs? Or
okay, so let's see. I guess a good way to transition the character into DJing would be to show the evolution of that. So again, I was kind of a nerdy kind of character, tried to dress like a lounge lizard, that eventually turned into hey, why don't you sing some karaoke after the show? Then I worked that into my gimmick. So I started singing karaoke, and I'd sing karaoke tracks along the karaoke tracks as I brought a wrestler to the ring, and I would pick the worst stuff possible, like Britney Spears, like Madonna, stuff that a guy would not like, do well with singing no matter what.
Yeah.
And I would get more heat that way. So eventually then people would say, hey, can you come do karaoke at my party? We'll book you for that. So I hooked up with one of the sound guys, and for a short time we figured out how to do karaoke. Then I got a bar gig. Then the bar gig turned into, hey, can you DJ my wedding? And it actually pulled me out of the sport, because as a wrestling manager, making a couple $100, that was never the huge talent. A couple $100 at most, sometimes $50, sometimes a hot dog and a handshake, but then when you start DJing a wedding, you're making $1,000, and all those weddings are on the same dates as these events. So that pulled me into DJing, and then many Saturdays I'd start taking those gigs instead of wrestling, because it just paid really well.
Yeah.
And to get back into wrestling, then that would transition me over into how I became a writer, writing the books. So it all kind of, there's a semblance of order to how it progressed.
Yeah.
It went from wrestler into wrestler that sings karaoke, manager kind of thing, into wedding DJ and doing school events and, even sporting events and stuff, but not really available for wrestling shows. And then saying, geez, I want to still have my hand in the business a little bit. And then I start talking to some of the old wrestlers again that I had worked with, and offer book deals and stuff to help out. So.
All right. Well, I got another thing. I also understand when I watched that podcast earlier that you're a English teacher. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's always good to have, I always say, a backup plan, right? And my backup plan was to be an English teacher. I had an interest in writing. I was pretty creative. Back in high school, I did pretty well in English classes. So I think what turned me on to the idea is one time an English teacher brought a bunch of jazz artists in for us to write poetry over the music too. And we had like this little event, and to see something that I had written performed by others was something I found pretty rewarding and pretty cool. So, and you can also see how that might relate to the wrestling and the DJing and everything, the creativity side of things. So all along, I've always stayed an English teacher, and that paid the bills better than weekend warrior type stuff. Then again, I mean, I had little options where maybe I could have really pursued doing the wrestling thing, but it was so risky that I said, if that ever comes and I go to work, for like WWE or something like that, it would have to be an offer that would surpass what I'm doing now. And then eventually it moved to like, you had to move to Florida and really like up everything, and I wasn't willing to do that. So that's why the other things I did pretty well with that stuff. Who knows if I went the other way and really pushed for it, I probably could have gotten a couple of years. But like you said, Vince isn't a big fan of the thing that I did. So
I understand that. Writing. So you've written some books, some good ones.
Cool. Thank you.
With Tito Santana, Sabu, Kamala. There's some others.
Sure.
how did you get a hold of these guys? I mean, was it difficult to get a hold of them? Because I'll be honest with you, sometimes reaching out to some of these wrestlers, it's a challenge. They especially, I don't have a lot of contact information. I have to use their social media.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, it broke up a little bit, so I wasn't sure if you were done or not. Once in a while, I'm getting these lags. So
yeah.
But anyhow, the funny thing with that was, I expected to do it. I had a sci-fi book that I was working on called Tag, kind of like you have to go into a time loop. You have to go in the past, find yourself and touch yourself to jump back in the same time loop. It's kind of a neat idea. But I was quickly learning that when people invest in you as a writer, you don't make as many sales. You don't get as many eyes unless you already have an established audience for that.
Yeah.
So to do nonfiction, you're going to sell a whole heck lot more copies because there's a built-in audience, right? Mm-hmm. So if I was going to write sci-fi, people would have to already want to buy the Kenny Casanova sci-fi work, and they don't know what it is, so they don't invest. But if they know who Big Van Vader is, or they know who Danny Davis, the evil ref from WrestleMania 3 is, there's a little bit of a built-in audience there already, and wrestling fans are super loyal, as you know. That's probably why people in this right now, if they are. So being able to write that nonfiction made sense to me. So I put that sci-fi book aside when I heard that Kamala, who I had played Kimchi for a number of times in the Northeast, had lost, he had lost both of his legs to diabetes. And I said, hey man, this is horrible. Maybe we could just write your book and put it out, and you can use it to help with medical costs. And he said, Kenny, that sounds like a good idea. It's like, but these days, there's a lot. I've been screwed over by a lot of people. I don't know if people know that's Kamala's like.
I didn't know that till right now.
Like,
so yeah,
a lot of people look at Kamala and think he's a big angry crazy guy from Uganda. No. He kind of talks slow, probably even slower than that, more like in there. And he's from Mississippi. Right? He was located Mississippi and did a lot of Memphis stuff. Jerry the King Lawler helped him come up with the gimmick. But anyhow, so I told him that. He said, well, been screwed by a lot of promoters, so I want you to talk to who I would consider my financial advisor. And I'm like, all right, I'll give the guy a call and see what he thinks. And I call it up. And it's the Birdman, Coco Beware. And Birdman's like, oh, Kenny, you should do a good job for Kamala. I think you do a good job. Just put a little high energy into that book and we'll do fine, But treat him like he's somebody's grandfather, because he is, and don't screw him over. And I said, all right, man, let's write the book, and this will be my first one, so I'm just going to give him all the money and we'll make it a fundraiser. And it did pretty well, I would say it's probably not my best writing, because here, 400 pages times maybe 7 books later, I've gotten better at writing, and I can write a book quicker, I think, these days when the guys are on board. Did really well, and that kind of kick-started me off with, the writing.
I was going to tell you, I also heard on another one that you wrote 2 books at the same time, and I don't know how you did that, because if it was me, I'd be getting confused on one book from the other as far as the characters, and getting lost and trying to remember stuff. How the heck did you do that?
I'm writing 3 at the same time now, but and I also have 3 others that I'm kind of producing. So there's actually kind of 6 in the works right now. But the reason 2 came out at the same time before was that I was working on Big Van Vader's, and he got diagnosed. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
He got a diagnosis of 2 years to live because of congestive heart disorder, and we were kind of on and off and going back and fixing it up, and we had to change a big part of his book after we were about half done or more. And he got that diagnosis because he wanted to change some of the tone of the book. you don't want to clean it up. You don't want to crap all over a guy, you know, that maybe you weren't friendly with and didn't close ties with, you know, or have some kind of closure with, and put that in your book and then pass away and never have been able to fix something like that. So we went back and cleaned up some stuff, some areas that, you know, he thought if this comes out post-mortem, you know, I would never be able to fix some kind of heat, you know. So I was going back and fixing that up. And Vader himself is difficult to work with, and everybody, including himself, would tell you that. So like that took 4 years to write.
Oh, wow.
And as that, he would say, hey, you know, a couple times I'd be like, geez, I haven't talked to him in 6 months. You know, I'm still writing and doing a little research here and there. I would check in on him, and I'd freak out a little bit. I'm like, dude, are we still like doing this book or what? He'd come back and say, listen, we'll get it done. It's like, brother, we'll get it done. He's like, but if I go dark, I go dark. He's like, just let me go dark for a while. We'll get it done. I'm like, all right. And he did. We got it done.
Yeah.
You know, but in the meanwhile, I was writing another one. That's when I was writing Sabu. And those two books, I guess, I don't know if you know him, Kevin Gill was a co-host of the Keeping It 100 podcast, and he's done some commentary for a number of different promotions. He was the promoter for a long time for ICP's wrestling, Juggalos. He put it over funny. I hadn't thought of it before. It's like Kenny Casanova dropped 2 books at the same time. He's like, you know, musicians do that with albums. It's like, but I've never seen 2 books come out. He's right. I hadn't thought of it. Yeah, we put Sabu and Big Van Vader out, and that was competition for myself to some degree. But I guess that's kind of neat, you know.
Yeah, it is. That is
different.
neat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was you have several books. What was the one that you found most interesting and most not, I wouldn't say easy to write, but most that you could write with, you know, I guess pleasure?
I like the Danny Davis book. Yeah, I think I like the Danny Davis book because I wrote that one differently. We wrote that with taking his life and making it into a more of like a young adult novel, more so than an autobiography. So there's a clear message, there's a clear beginning, middle, and end. It follows a character arc. What we did was we picked out all these different occurrences that happened throughout his life, and we cut out stuff that didn't fit the narrative of a novel. You know, I wanted to climb. I wanted to have a clear climax. I wanted to be somewhat of a hero journey. The message we wanted to put in that was through hard work, a good work ethic. You can make something of yourself, and knowing when to stop, and all of that seemed to work out pretty well in the book. It's not the most popular book that I put out. It's not the longest book that I put out. I think it's the shortest one. It's probably about 250 pages, where most of my stuff I shoot for 400 plus. But I kind of like the message, and I like the idea of being able to write more. I don't want to call it fiction, but the way we wrote it, it's sort of fiction, you know, in that we wanted it to look like a story.
Yeah. That's interesting. I remember old Danny Davis, the ref, when I was younger guy.
He had a lot of heat for a short time.
He was. He talked. You know, he got a lot of heat, and those were the good times. I wanted to talk to you about that. Wrestling today versus when like we were kids and watching it. To me, I see a huge difference. I don't. What is your take on it? What are the things that you think maybe, I guess the word lacking, if you watch it? I don't know if you even watch it anymore. Or
I try. I've been watching more AEW, and there's a couple of reasons for that. But okay, so the two things that I think WWE are lacking now, not that I'm an expert, but one, it's too freaking much programming. I think one key that would help, and they'll never do it because of all of those commercials they can sell during, 3 plus 2 plus 1 or 2, whatever it is, hours a week, Man, if they could cut that back down to, 1 or 2 good hours, And then maybe, you know, how they used to do the magazine programs in the weekend, you know, showing some of the house shows and stuff in this to really to promote one big show,
Yeah.
you know, during the week. Oops, hold on here. I got a call coming in during an interview. Let's see if I can. There we go. Okay, so that's weird. I haven't had that happen before. But then again, I don't usually do on the phone here. But yeah, that's one thing. They got to cut programming. There's too much, and
Yeah.
that would also probably help the quality, because you know, if you've got all of this time to fill, that you're putting some stuff in there that's not quality. You have to. It's watered down, right? The
Yeah.
other thing is I think they're afraid to make one name surpass the brand. They're pushing the brand. They want WWE to be the big thing that everyone pays for, not Hulk Hogan, not John Cena, not Undertaker, not a marquee name. They've even said this, I think, in investor interviews, that they don't want to create a new Stone Cold Austin or a new Rock. They have to pay big money and then see their investment go out the door when he leaves, you know. But if you think about it, by not creating that big name, there's not one reason to turn in. There's just a bunch of little smaller reasons to tune in every week.
Yeah.
And whenever they have these big events, they're relying on these guys that are pushed past their prime now. They're calling back Goldberg,
Yes.
who you know, who is no longer you know, a young guy that can do all the stuff that he used to do. Or they called back the Undertaker for many years. And you know, I'd say just take one guy and push him to the moon. And when you got that new star again, because they knew how to do it back in the day, and I'm sure they could use that formula, maybe they'd create a reason and a new star, you know, and if he leaves, and create a new one. I don't agree with the way that they write it these days. And a lot of it probably has to do with ego and stuff. So I don't know.
I agree. There's not a lot of storytelling anymore. They don't build up a wrestler. Because they have a pay-per-view every month. You can't really, to me, build up somebody and then say, you know, in a month, oh yeah, you're going to wrestle so-and-so, and then it kind of dies off. It's kind of a lost art to me as well. So I agree with you 100%. And I watch AEW, and I think it's a good alternate. I don't watch WWE too much anymore. It's just getting too cartoonish and commercial for me. I mean, I watch it once in a while, but so you're juggling a lot of things right now from what I've understand. You know, you're writing some books, you're a teacher, you got a family. How do you juggle all that? Because that's a lot of stuff.
It's tough. And, you know, sometimes I'd say, I don't want to say that like there's anything to worry about, but I get a little bit like anxiety, like I can't finish all of this stuff all at once. And it bothers me.
Yeah.
You know, right now I'm working on finishing up Justin Incredible's book, which should be pretty cool because it does Aldo remember of the click for a bit, you know, so it's got a lot of that stuff in it. You know, so but sometimes and I think any author will tell you this, once you get to hitting these guys up with a lot of interviews, come your 20th or your 30th interview, it's kind of like pulling teeth, and you're asking stuff you know, that is just maybe not super interesting at some point. So some things lag on. So that's why maybe we leave it off to the side. Then I start ODBs from you know, from Impact, the female wrestler. I'm working on her book because Mick Foley asked me as a favor. He's like, I wrote forwards for your book. Can you write her book? And I'm like, oh, geez, okay, yeah. She wasn't really my first pick, but she's got a story and it's pretty cool, you know. So I'm working on that, and I'm also working on the Good Brothers book. You know, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. I gotta say, Gallows is a mind for the business, man. He's and Luke Gallows is super smart. You know, he's handling most of the book stuff with me right now. We haven't talked in a couple of weeks, you know, and I start getting a little antsy, you know. It's hard. It is tough to juggle all this stuff. At the same time, for the last 2 years, I've been trying to help a guy named Kirk Bushner put out Chavo Guerrero Sr.'s book. and it's about Dunn. Also helping a guy that did a ton of comic book stuff. A guy named John Kraut. I'm helping him with his first autobiography. Also a couple side projects, Ken Patera's book, Curtis Hughes' book. And another guy, Herb Abrams. It's not for Herb Abrams because obviously he's gone, but I'm helping him helping him with his first book. So it's tough, and I might not talk to a couple of these guys for 2 or 3 weeks, and I sort of get nervous because I'm trying to help the project along, you know. So it's a lot of stuff, but in the end, it's super cool to see this stuff finally come out. It's rewarding. So
Ken Patera, I did a podcast with him about 3 months ago, and that guy,
all right, nice.
He is such a wealth of knowledge and experience, and great guy. Had a lot of interesting conversations with him, and that book, I know, because you do it right, I know it'll be a dang good book, and I'll be looking for it when it's published.
And that's the thing. We got a newer guy working on it. His name's Simon Gregory, and he doesn't write as fast as me. So like if he hears anything, I'm like, get to writing that book, man. I mean, he's got probably 50 to 75 pages, but it's taken him a year and a half or so. I think he started, working on it. So
you'd be done with it.
Hopefully he gets some more done and we get that come out. Yeah, I probably would. Usually about a year or so I try to get stuff round up, but I try anyways. But
all right. Are there any projects, other things you're working on right now? I mean,
I got a line of coloring books that we put out. A guy named Peter Bregman. Our collaborative effort is called Bled Time Stories, sort of like bedtime stories, but bleeding. And we have a Cactus Jack one. It's called Cactus Jack and the Beanstalk. We got Demolition on Mars. We have Sabu versus the Three Pigs, and now we have So basically the idea is it's a coloring book, sort of like a comic book, and it pits the wrestlers versus fairy tales, or like kind of like bedtime stories. So then the newest one we just finished writing and we're putting the art to now. It's called Goodzilla, and it's the Good Brothers, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson fighting Godzilla, but a Goodzilla version. That makes sense.
You talked about Luke Gallows a little bit earlier. I don't know. Do you know Mac Davis?
Davis. No.
He's down in Georgia. He works with Bill After and them. And anyway, I had a podcast with him about a week ago.
Yeah, no, I do know. Yeah. I do.
Bald guy, goatee.
He does stuff with Luke. Yeah.
Yep. And he had an interview with Luke. And you were right. I mean, the guy was just spitting off a bunch of stuff about wrestling that, his character, you'd think, there ain't no way, but he's very,
that was
very,
the problem. The first 20 pages I wrote for, the first 20 pages I wrote for him or so, I tried to write in his voice. That's a big part of ghostwriting, is you try to make it sound like what you believe they would sound like. And it was all his voice that I knew from interviews. So, a lot of carny talk, a lot of, kind of stereotypical character. And he said, that's not really me. He's like, that's what you see of me on TV. So we had to go back and touch it up because he didn't want to be looked at as the carny wrestler that, is using all that lingo everywhere. So had to redraft, but
hey, it'll be worth it in the end. So, well, I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, it'll be cool.
And I'll be looking for those books coming out. And thank you so much for coming on here. I know you're a busy man, and
no problem.
Folks, look for Kenny Casanova's books. As coloring books coming out and everything else. Kenny, thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right.